Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fifth and final virtual business workshop for 2023. My name is Michael Casale. I am the Commissioner of the Niagara County Department of Economic Development. And today's workshop is going to focus on energy incentives and energy efficiency programs, as well as low-cost power programs. First thing I want to do is I want to thank our presenters for giving us their valuable time this morning. They include Richard Smith from the New York Power Authority, who will be discussing the Western New York hydropower development programs. Sarah Smiley with EIC Open Sea PACE, which is the Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing Program. Jenna Kavanaugh, David Jager, and Whitney Skeens, all from National Grid, will talk to us this morning about economic development, energy efficiency, and the electric vehicle programs. I'll even throw a couple of slides in there myself to talk about Niagara County's Empower Niagara low-cost power program. Just wanted to remind everybody before we get into our presentation this morning, you won't have to go crazy taking notes because we're going to be sending you an email soon, which will contain this slide deck that you're about to see from all of our presenters. That slide deck will have in it hot links that you can click on and contact all of our presenters if you wanted to have a discussion or chat back and forth. Also, a couple of quick general housekeeping items. You're going to be muted throughout this presentation. If you have a question, please use the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen, and we'll answer your question at the end of the program or whenever we can fit you in. If we can't answer all the questions in our allotted time, we'll follow up with you afterwards and get you the information you need. Today's workshop is designed to give you an overview of the various programs that are out there. We'd be happy to schedule a one-on-one meeting with you to discuss any of these programs in more detail. Just let us know in the Q&A panel and we'll reach back out to you. So let's get right into it, and we can start with the Niagara County Empower Niagara program. A little bit of history first about this program. Back in 2007, the New York Power Authority signed a new 50-year relicensing agreement to operate that power plant in Lewiston. And that agreement included a number of environmental and financial commitments by NYPA to Niagara County and other Western New York municipalities. In addition to the monetary support, the licensing agreement allocated 32 megawatts of low-cost hydropower to the host communities, saving those recipients as much as 75% of the cost of energy. Niagara County, as one of those host communities, received 9 megawatts of power from the Power Authority, and our Niagara County legislature recognized the need and earmarked about 2.3 megawatts of that total 9 for economic development purposes, and that ended up being the Empower Niagara program, which was a program established again by the legislature to assist small to medium-sized businesses that were not eligible for New York Power Authority power. Next slide, Kathy. The Empower Niagara criteria, and you'll find this on our website as well. You've got to obviously be located in Niagara County as a company. You must not already be a recipient of low-cost power through any of NYPA's programs or receive an allocation from NYPA during the term of the Empower Niagara agreement. In other words, you can't double dip. It's either one or the other. And we'll try to help you out with regards to what program fits best for you. The company has to be planning to acquire or expand an existing facility and or add some machinery and or equipment in your process that would be increasing your electric demand. And that increase has to be at least 50 kW of new electric load. We brought that down. It was originally 75, and we brought that down over the last about year and a half to make the program more accessible to smaller businesses. Project has to result in the retention and or creation of jobs. This is a program that is also available to companies that would promise to retain their existing workforce. And finally, you've got to be completing your project in 2 years with construction or machinery and equipment installation beginning within a year after the application was approved. Next slide, Kathy. Also, the proposed use of power results in an economic benefit, which it most usually does. The company must be willing to commit in writing to create and or retain jobs. And again, it's important to note that the applications will be evaluated on a competitive basis based on the capital investment, the number of jobs created and or retained, and the amount of new load, and also steps taken to reduce your existing energy costs. Next slide, Kathy. The application process, it's something that we walk you through. I think if there were a customer on the line right now, they would tell you that it's a pretty easy process to go through. And again, the application is a fillable form. You'll find it online. There's the website again. And when you get this slide deck emailed to you, you can just click on that link there and get right to our website. Company will submit the application to our Department of Economic Development. Staff will then submit the application and backup documentation to the Empower Niagara Board. And then that board sends that recommendation, their recommendation, onto the legislature's Economic Development Committee. And then it goes to the full legislature for approval. And Empower Niagara will, in most instances, and I don't think there's ever been an instance that they hadn't, commit the power application for at least a period of 3 years. How long does the process take? It could take anywhere from 30 to 45 days. And again, we will walk you through that process. Next slide, Kathy. To date, we've got 19 companies that have received an allocation of Empower Niagara Power. And this is a pretty deep, I would say this is one heck of an economic impact that this program has brought to Niagara County and the region. Those 19 companies have invested over $58 million into their facilities. Those companies have retained nearly 800 jobs, and they've also created 415 new jobs. So you can see that the program is doing the job and making an economic impact here in Niagara County. Next slide, Kathy. This is the breakdown of industry sectors that right now our current customers are in. Manufacturing is the one that really is head and heels over the others. We've got 9 businesses that have taken advantage of the program. When you look at retail, and I made a few notes. We're looking at companies like Pelicanos Marketplace. Pelicanos built a new building, as you all know, and their load is over 50 kW with all the freezers and refrigerators and whatever else they have there. Everything is included. That includes HVAC, lights, and everything else. So retail is eligible. We've got some tourism companies. The ones that stand out most are the Aquarium of Niagara in Niagara Falls, and the Cornerstone Arena, which is our largest customer in the city of Lockport. And we've had a couple of projects from the agriculture sector. The one that comes to mind most is Russell Farms and their controlled atmosphere facilities in the town of Newfane, and one warehousing and distribution project as well. Next slide, Kathy. So the question is, are you our next Empower Niagara company? And if you feel you can qualify, there's the link again to get to our website and a fillable form. And if you have any questions about the program, my contact information is right there. You give me a call anytime and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Kathy, are there any questions on the Empower Niagara program in the chat box?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn now the webinar over to my friend Richard Smith from the New York Power Authority to talk about Western New York hydropower. Rich, take it away.
Michael, thank you very much. Kathy, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to participate today to talk about NYPA's economic development power supply programs. A couple of warnings. I am just getting over a cold, so forgive me if I have to cough or take a breath. Second warning is I have 15 slides. Most of them are pretty easy. We're already on the second one. I'm sure you're not feeling any pain. But we'll try to get this through, get you through as quickly as we can. So today I'd like to talk to you about just a little bit about NYPA, our background, our history, and then we'll launch into a discussion about Recharge New York and Western New York hydropower, which is sometimes referred to as expansion power or replacement power. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a commercial about NYPA. We were established in 1931. We are the largest state public power organization in the United States. We own and operate 16 power generating facilities across the state and approximately 1,400 miles of the state's transmission system. That means we deliver power to companies that deliver power to you, like National Grid. We are a public authority of the state of New York. That means we do not use any tax revenues or state credits. We are entirely financed on our own, which is just another way of saying we are bond financed. And increasingly, we have been one of the state's valuable economic development partners, but that is becoming more so as companies become more and more interested in renewable energy. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk today a little bit about Recharge New York and our Western New York hydropower programs. Next slide, please. Recharge New York is NYPA's statewide economic development power program. That means it's available across the state of New York. It began with 910 megawatts of power, comprised of 50% NYPA hydropower and 50% market power that is procured by NYPA. It is an immensely popular program. Today, there is roughly 18 megawatts of power available in this program, and we expect it to increase to about 40 megawatts by 2024. There's a number of reasons for that. It is like all of our economic development incentive programs, it is focused on encouraging job impact, parentheses, retention or creation, and capital investment in the entire state of New York. We will get into the application process in a moment, but for now, it's important for you to understand that this is a competitive process, and that I mean it is on a first come, first served basis. If your company is awarded an allocation of Recharge New York, this is accompanied by a 7-year agreement, which is renewable for multiple 7-year terms, so long as you meet your job and capital investment commitments. And typically we don't do 100% of any company's electric load, which means that you have to buy a balance of your power from another entity. But we're generally very agnostic to where you get the rest of your power. For example, many of our customers will buy the balance of their power from an energy service company or an ESCO, and then some will buy from National Grid, which is essentially a pass-through. But so long as you're a customer of one of the companies, the IOUs, investor-owned utilities or distribution companies, they're also known as, if you're a customer of one of the ones listed there, you may participate in Recharge New York. Next slide, please. So in terms of eligibility, the program is broken into buckets, large businesses being over 400 kW, small businesses less than or equal to 400 kW, and then not-for-profits. And we did that to kind of make sure that all of those different business classes could participate in the program. We didn't want, for example, large companies to kind of dominate the program and kind of use up all the power. So we wanted to make sure that small businesses and not-for-profits had a chance as well. But to participate, you must be a customer of an IOU, so National Grid, for example. You have to have a demand meter. So if you look on your bill and you have a demand charge or a KW charge, you can apply for Recharge New York. That's because the demand charge is kind of where we apply the discounts that we offer through the program. There's a sort of a very unique facet of Recharge New York in that we can apply the program as a retention tool and as an expansion or attraction tool. It's very unusual, but we can apply Recharge New York to your existing electric load up to approximately 50% of the load. So that's something that's, as I said, we don't find that very often in the marketplace for retention. A lot of times I'm asked, are there savings or what are the savings? And that's a very kind of not a difficult, but it can be a challenging question to answer because it's based on a number of parameters. If you think about savings, you want to think about versus something, and it's generally in comparison to market pricing, which is a variable price. Electricity is a commodity, and it's very subjected to supply and demand, so it will vary in price. If you think about the COVID period, demand went way down, and so the price of electricity followed. Now that we've come out of COVID, that's sort of reversed itself. But in addition to that, we look at a number of parameters to kind of help guide you in terms of what savings are available. So for example, the state is broken down into zones, A through, I believe it's J or K downstate. We are, for example, in zone A, which is also referred to in some cases as frontier. We look at your service classification. If you're a grid customer, you might be a service class or SC2D. You might be an SC3. You might be an SC3A. We also look at voltage delivery. There are really 4 options here: primary, secondary, subtransmission, or transmission. And then lastly, we look at your load factor. This is really a calculation of your operating performance. Mathematically, it's expressed as kilowatt hours, or your consumption, divided by demand, or kW, times some sort of time factor. So if we're looking at a monthly load factor, we would say 24 hours in a day times the number of days on your billing, on your bill, and you can find that if you like. But we will load all of that information into a pricing template, and we'll try to help you understand what your savings would have been if you had been a Recharge New York customer over the last 12 months. So my role is to kind of help you understand the value of the program. Your role is to kind of tell me what looks good. Sometimes customers will see significant savings based on those parameters. Sometimes the savings is not very great. And I've had customers tell me, that savings level is not attractive to us. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And then sometimes they're kind of, where do I sign? But my role is to kind of help you understand the value of the program and to show you how to apply. Okay, next slide. All right, the next 2 slides are really kind of a look at the criteria that we consider with your Recharge New York application. These are all sort of statutorily driven, so you could actually find these in statute. But once you complete an application, the group that evaluates will look at all these criteria, and they will make a recommendation that will be considered by a number of entities. So if we can just kind of give folks a moment to look at those and the criteria on the next slide, just to sort of give you kind of a feel for what we sort of consider when we look at these applications. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, a little bit about the application process. We do use the consolidated funding application. If you're familiar with it, it's an application that is used by not only commercial businesses, but also governments and municipalities. As you access that application online, you will be asked certain questions. For example, why are you applying, or what incentives are you applying for today? Recharge New York will be listed there. If you check that box, the application will drive you down into a series of questions that are related to Recharge New York. Now, a lot of times customers will apply for a retention allocation simultaneous to an allocation if they're expanding as well. And you can do that at the same time. You don't have to fill out the application twice. Okay, we go to the next slide, please. So I mentioned before that these applications are reviewed by a number of entities. We do rely on scoring from the regional economic development councils There are 10 in the state. The Western New York REDC, for example, sort of kind of focuses on our area. So they have an opportunity to score your application. We also use the Economic Development Power Allocation Board. We do this because we want to give local entities an opportunity to weigh in on these applications as they relate to the strategies and priorities of that regional economic development council. And then finally, these recommendations will filter up to NYPA's Board of Trustees, and they will contemplate applications generally on a quarterly basis. We do get a lot of applications for Recharge New York, and we tend to aggregate them and have the Board of Trustees look at them on a quarterly basis. So there's quite a bit of a process that goes on here. Next slide, please. So I mentioned at the top of the Recharge New York discussion that the program is made up of 50% NYPA hydropower and 50% market power that is procured by NYPA. If you are awarded an allocation of Recharge New York, you will have the option of taking what we call the blended rate, or you can take the hydro-only rate. It's entirely up to you. What's important in that decision process is to kind of know what's going on with the market at the time. As I mentioned earlier, market pricing is variable pricing. So if market pricing is high, or we can't really beat market pricing with the market power that we procure, you're better off just taking the hydro-only option. So what can typically happen is when you work with me, I can do some of this for you, but when you actually get allocated that power, you would have the option to sort of revisit and have this repriced to help you understand which option is best for your company. Some other kind of areas I want to get into a little bit here is the contracts do. So we don't offer fixed pricing with our product. We offer what we call stable pricing, and that's because we do reserve the right to adjust your pricing on an annual basis, which is going to be based on 3 indices that would be included in your agreement. These are Bureau of Labor Statistics indices, and they basically give NYPA the right to increase or decrease your pricing, but our option to do so is capped at plus or minus 5%. Now, we recognize that these programs are economic development incentive programs, so we try to be very, very aggressive when we do have the option to increase pricing. For example, this past year, according to those 3 indices, we were allowed to increase our pricing by 8%. But we actually went to our Board of Trustees and we said, we don't want to do that. The minimum that we could sort of live with here is 3%. And the board agreed with us, and we actually only increased pricing by 3%, which is pretty incredible in sort of the inflationary period that we're in right now. Again, trying to be very aggressive with the program. I did mention that contract lengths are 7-year terms. They are renewable for multiple 7-year terms. This is not a one and done program. If you expand in the future, you may apply multiple times to support multiple expansions, so long as you're adding jobs, capital investment, and new electric load. And then finally, one of the favorite features that I like is if for some reason you don't like the Recharge New York program, you can opt out with a 90-day notice to the Niagara New York Power Authority. And I like that a lot because it gives you that option. It gives you a little bit of freedom to sort of, walk away if you don't like it. Okay, so let me shift to Western New York Hydropower. We are all in a very unique situation here in Western New York to have the benefit of the Western New York Hydropower program. It is, by some characterizations, our flagship program, and it is available to companies that locate within a 30-mile radius of our Niagara Power project. And I should say eligible companies. And I didn't talk a little bit about eligibility before, but if you are a manufacturing company, if you're making something, you are absolutely eligible for both Recharge New York and the Western New York Hydropower program. If you are engaged in retail activities, if you're engaged in sort of like hotels or places of overnight accommodation, sporting and gaming venues are not eligible. Residential is not eligible for the program. But just to give you some guidance in terms of that aspect. And if we could go to the next slide, we could delve into that a little more deeply. So here you have a list, okay, located within a 30-mile radius of the power project, creating new jobs, capital investment. You have to add a minimum of 100 kW of new electric load. So it fits very nicely with the IDA's Empower project because they're focusing on a smaller increase. You do need it to be served by an investor-owned utility. So we talked about that earlier. We talked about retail and non-residential not being eligible. A little bit about your project timing. You really need to start your project within 1 year of getting your award, and you need to complete the project within 3 years. And we do that for a number of reasons. This is really opportunity cost for us. If we encumber our power, we want to make sure that we're using it wisely. So if we have projects, they sort of linger for 5, 6, 7 years, we're really tying up power that we could better use elsewhere to support economic development in the Western New York region. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide and the next slide, we're talking a little bit about evaluation criteria. Again, this is sort of all statutorily driven, but capital investment, investments in machinery and equipment, jobs, basically creation. We're going to look at to try to drive some objectivity to the program. We want to look at things like ratio of jobs per megawatt, which has become very challenging for NYPA in the past probably 2 to 3 years, as we see more energy intensive businesses come into the area that are really interested in that renewable energy. So think about hydrogen, for example, green hydrogen, very energy intensive. They're reliant on renewable energy, but they don't tend to create a lot of jobs. And so this has created a fair amount of challenge for NYPA as we consider these types of projects. We want to see the economic development, we want to see the job creation, but we really are stretching ourselves to help them get as much renewable power as we can to support that project and make it happen in the area. Next slide, please. Oops, so no, there we go. Okay, so here's just sort of some final considerations that we look at. If you are an energy intensive business, for example, we want to try to lean into that because obviously your OpEx cost is going to be a little bit higher. Economic development impact, so more jobs, more caps that help us to recommend higher allocations of power to our Board of Trustees. Okay, if you're redeveloping brownfield or distressed areas, that's something we take into consideration. How does it impact your competitiveness? How does it impact your competitors? If you have competitors in state, we want to think about that. We don't want to hurt other parts of New York State. So we take that into consideration as well. A lot of criteria, these are basically formula driven. And again, we try to be fair, we try to be objective when we make our recommendations to our senior leadership and Board of Trustees. Next slide. If you have a project, I would encourage you to talk with Mike Cassell. We talk regularly. Jenna and I, you'll hear from Jenna later, we talk regularly. It's a very tight community. We try to share projects. We try to support these projects as much as we can. I know you're getting a lot of information to me or today. Please feel free to reach out to me if you do have questions or you'd like to see some modeling or understand a little bit more about the application process. my job is to help you understand the value of the program and to shepherd you through the application process, help you understand what next steps are coming your way and so forth. So there's my contact information. I'm a phone call away. I'm an email away. Happy to chat with you anytime that you have something that, you'd like to share with me. Hope that helped.
It did. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And again, I'll echo his comments. We talk all the time. And Rich is there to help you. And when he does that modeling, he'll let you know, right, Rich? This makes sense for you or it doesn't make sense for you. So thanks. I appreciate that. Our next presenter is Sarah Smiley from EIC Open Seat PACE to talk about the Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing Program. Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share some information about our program with you today. Kathy, you can move to the next slide. Just a little bit about our organization. So I'm the Director of Municipal Membership for Energy Improvement Corporation, or EIC for short. We're a nonprofit local development corporation. We operate statewide on behalf of our member municipalities, and we are very proud to administer our program on behalf of Niagara County. And it is our mission to operate a successful commercial PACE finance program to further the state's goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing the adoption of clean energy. Next slide. So PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And as the name suggests, it is financing for clean energy measures that is secured through an assessment on the property. This type of financing is enabled by state law because the state recognized that access to capital was a real hurdle for property owners to make improvements to an aging building stock, which was wasting a lot of energy and therefore wasting a lot of money through their properties. And it was also a hurdle for developers to build new buildings to a higher energy performance standard. So this law enables municipalities to provide financing that is secured through a special assessment lien that is recorded on the property. So it's similar to an assessment for other public benefits, whether it's sewer districts or water districts or sidewalk repair, except that instead of an assessment being recorded against a whole district of buildings, it's just being recorded on the property that is directly receiving those benefits. Next slide. So PACE is an alternative source of capital for your construction project. It can be used for up to 100% of the cost of the energy portion of the project. So that can be renewable energy or energy efficiency measures. And it is secured through this lien that runs with the property. So if you ever sell your building, the next owner of the property would continue paying the annual installments of the assessment, just as they would pay taxes that are on the property as well. And this assessment enables a very long repayment period for the financing. So it enables building owners to move forward with improvements to their buildings that can create really significant improvements to reduce their operating expenses, as well as providing a benefit to the community by reducing emissions from their property. So the length of the repayment period can go as long as the expected useful life of the measures. So generally that's between 20 and 25 years. So this really is an alternative source of capital. If a business owner doesn't want to use their existing capital to focus on these types of energy improvements, or they don't have access to enough capital from their bank to move forward with these measures, PACE is a great option for you. EIC is the administrator of this program. We are not the lender. So there are a list of over a dozen approved capital providers in our program who will work with you to provide that financing. And we encourage property owners to really shop around the whole list of capital providers to find the best one for your project and the best rate. Next slide, please. PACE is attractive to developers because it's a lower cost of capital than some other sources. And because it can only be used for measures that exceed a certain level of energy efficiency or for renewable energy, it incentivizes them to make their project much more energy efficient or to include renewable energy measures that might otherwise have been cut from the construction budget. So it's allowing our members, such as Niagara County, to facilitate much more higher performance buildings in the commercial building sector. And depending on the lease arrangement that the building owner has, the PACE assessment can be passed down to tenants of the building, who are also getting the benefit of lower utility costs, as well as a more comfortable building because of these energy improvement measures. Next slide, please. PACE financing can be used for any type of building as long as it is owned by a commercial entity. So this really runs the gamut across all sectors. It just cannot be individually owned or a residential property that has fewer than 5 units in the building. And it can't be anything that is owned by the municipality because it is secured through this lien that runs with the property. Next slide. So for eligible measures, this can include essentially anything that is going to reduce the energy consumption of the building or that generates renewable energy on site. And these qualifications are governed by guidance provided by NYSERDA, the state energy agency, that outlines what can qualify for PACE financing. So as you can see, this is for renovating existing buildings, or it can be used for new construction, including gut renovation. So if you're looking, perhaps there's an improvement you've been putting off, or like some equipment is nearing its end of life, such as boiler replacement, you can use PACE financing for that, or it can be for a whole building-wide improvements, full renovations. And the financing is from our private capital providers. It's not subsidized by any taxpayer money, but you are certainly welcome to access incentives from, I know we'll be hearing from National Grid, so from utility companies or from NYSERDA, and the PACE financing would be used to fund the net expense after that incentive is accounted for. And there's multiple ways to qualify a project. You can do a cost benefit analysis where the benefits, including energy savings as well as societal benefits, has to be greater than the cost of the measures, or you can be installing something that's a pre-qualified measure that is found in NYSERDA's guidance. And if you're building a new building or doing gut renovation, if you're going through a LEED program or Energy Star certification or building to the New York Stretch Code or Passive House Standard, those are other pathways to qualify your project for PACE financing in a very streamlined way. And if you are accessing incentives from the utility or NYSERDA, those incentives will also automatically qualify you because it's sort of being verified by a third party that it's cost effective. So that would also qualify the project for PACE financing. Next slide, please. So if you are interested in looking at this for your property, we do have a pre-application form on EIC's website that allows us to verify that the property is eligible. There can't be any bankruptcy, and the property owner must be current on property taxes and mortgage payments. Because it is secured through this municipally authorized lien that's recorded on the property, it is therefore, while it's junior to any municipal taxes on the property, it is senior to any non-municipal liens. So if there's a mortgage, it is required that you get a lender consent form signed by your bank before the financing can proceed. So once those criteria are met, you would provide an energy audit or energy model of the project. And if you're already working with an engineering firm, an energy auditor that can do that, or PACE capital provider you're working with would set you up with a firm that does that. They would provide us with the scope of work and the useful life calculations of the measures. And EIC has a third-party engineer who reviews the technical scope of the project to make sure that it does qualify for PACE financing and is providing a public benefit. And once that has been approved, you would enter into a finance agreement with the capital provider. And EIC also has agreements with the capital provider as well. EIC would then, when the transaction closes, EIC would record that benefit assessment lien on the property, on the land records for the property, and assign that lien to the capital provider. And then going forward, although this is a municipally authorized assessment, you won't see it on your tax bill. EIC would send you a separate bill directly to the property owner for repayment of the PACE assessment. Next slide. So we launched this program in 2019, and we've seen a lot of interest both on the municipal side in terms of counties and cities who really want to provide this financial resource to their commercial building owners. 29 projects have been financed so far in the program, and we've really seen a significant benefit in terms of energy savings for the property owner, as well as reduced emissions that the whole community is benefiting from. Next slide, please. So this is just a few sample projects from the number I mentioned. We've seen a number of hospitality projects utilize PACE financing for new construction. One here is Wildflower Farms in Ulster County. There's also a new hotel being built in Albany County using PACE financing. We've seen a number of rooftop solar projects utilize it as well as some major renovation projects. For example, this Marriott Syracuse downtown was doing a whole building renovation and used PACE financing for the energy portion of that project. We've also seen it used for adaptive reuse projects. So we've seen like a vacant warehouse being turned into a hotel. This project in the middle at the bottom, the Shrub Oak School in Westchester County, was a vacant building. It used to be a Jesuit missionary building and it was being converted into a private boarding school. So as part of that gut renovation, they used PACE financing for the energy portion of the project. So it really can be used to fill a funding gap in the construction budget. And last on this slide, but certainly not least, wonderful business in Niagara County, Wheatfield Gardens, 12.5-acre greenhouse farm, very intense, energy intensive business. So they utilize PACE financing to install measures to both reduce their operating expenses and also increase the control they had over temperatures to give them much greater efficiency over the operating process. Next slide, please. Here's my contact information. I really encourage you, if you have any questions or want to know more if this could benefit your property, to reach out and also take a look at our website to see more projects that have benefited from the financing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. I'll ask Kathy, are there any questions for Sarah that are on the chat?
No, not directly for Sarah. We had an inquiry again about the slides and just a reminder that we will be sending this out to everybody.
Great. Okay. So next up, we're going to hear from representatives from National Grid, who are going to discuss economic development, energy efficiency, and the EV programs. First up, I want to introduce Jenna Cavanaugh, who's the lead economic development rep for National Grid. Jenna, you're up.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike and Kathy. Thanks for having us here today, and welcome everyone. I really appreciate you joining us. Kathy, if you can advance the slide. And actually, we'll just skip right to the next. So as you know, National Grid is one of the primary electric utility service providers in West New York and primary in Niagara County. In the area, we have over 800 employees, and that it covers about nearly 500,000 residential customers, nearly over 45,000 commercial, and over 1,000 industrial customers. So having strong, resilient communities is critical to us. Today, Dave, Whitney, and I are going to discuss 3 different programs that bring resources and expertise, and they're designed to help grow and strengthen our local economies. And as Mike said, that is an economic development, energy efficiency, and an electric vehicle. Capital investment to upstate New York. You know, as many of you know, adequate infrastructure, availability, cost, they are really consistently ranked around the top factors for companies making location decisions, especially for manufacturing companies, whether they're expanding or trying to find a new facility. So we have a suite of economic development programs for those types of businesses. They focus on things like site development, smart growth and urban revitalization, Main Street redevelopment, facilitating customer growth through infrastructure assistance. And we work on projects like vacant buildings, redevelopments, brownfield reclamation, infrastructure upgrades, and also in the agricultural industries. Next slide, please. So we have about 18 different economic development programs. They are all very different. The suite of programs is available on shovelready.com. Today, I'm just going to review 4 of you so that you can get a sense of what is available. Each program is very nuanced. So if you, as we go through the slides today, if you think you have a program or a project that could fit one of the programs, the best thing to do is just to give me a call and we'll review it. You know, describe your project, the timeline, etc. But amongst these programs, there are certain characteristics that are similar. This is a reimbursable grant program. So that means that you have to complete the project, you know, meet all the qualifications, and then you're reimbursed your award once the project is completed. We do have a rolling application process, so you can apply at any time. One of the things that I want to mention, though, is across the 18 or so different programs, it is only one program available per project. So among the suite, it's one, but it is stackable with the energy efficiency and electric vehicle programs. Next slide, please. One of my favorite programs is the Main Street Commercial District Revitalization Programs. And that is a grant to help take a vacant building and get it back in circulation. So if you have a project in a building that is vacant in an underutilized central business district or commercial area, that would be applicable. It should be, we like to see it vacant for about a year or so. They need to demonstrate potential job creation, and we would, you know, to really determine the value of the award, we would look at the renovation costs of the building. It's a matching grant. And again, it is really for commercial buildings. So if you do have a mixed use, so it would not cover housing projects, but if you have a mixed use building, we would look at that as a potential and evaluate it based on the commercial space. And we would, to assess that, we would really review your budget in detail. Next slide. Another grant that we have is Electric Capital Investment Incentive, and that is used for companies that are expanding or building a new electric utility infrastructure to support their business. That is primarily used by manufacturers, warehouse distribution centers, some back office headquarters facilities. And it really is exclusive to businesses within very specific industries. The grant helps offset the cost of that upgrade. So if you have a work request with National Grid and we assess through our design and engineering teams the cost to bring the power to that site or facility, once we understand that, that's when we determine the eligibility and the award for the grant. Now, the program funds cannot exceed the final cost of the energy infrastructure improvements and no more than 30% of the total capital investment. And similar to what I had mentioned with Main Street, we like to see, we need to see the creation of jobs and capital investment for these projects. Next slide. Another favorite program of mine is the Manufacturing Productivity Program. And this helps manufacturers that are really trying to create, you know, cost savings, sales growth, and retain jobs for their businesses, and really helps with increasing ultimately productivity on the shop floor. We provide matching grants of up to $15,000 for lean manufacturing and productivity improvements. Also matching grants of $15,000 for sales growth and product development projects, and provide matching grants of up to $40,000 for projects that are both provide lean manufacturing but growth. And we work with Insight Consulting to deliver this project. So if you think that you have a project that might apply, you would connect through us to Insight Consulting, but they would do some of the heavy lifting too of the application online for this grant. Next slide. Now, just recently, Niagara County hosted an entire session on the Brownfield program. So I would, if you're interested, encourage you to review those presentations. But I thought this was a really an important one to continue to highlight. We do have a program that supports the development of abandoned sites and buildings. So if you're doing demolition, remediation, asbestos abatement, that is where the Brownfield project or grant would come into play. The maximum grant is $300,000, and it can be used up to 25% of the eligible program costs. And this is really important because it takes as you know, an underutilized or fallow site and gets it back into circularization, which is very important to our community. The nice thing about the Brownfield program too is that the payout is upon completion of the remediation, not the final product. So once you do have your certificate of remediation, you would be eligible to apply for reimbursement. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of economic development programs. They can only be used one per project. So if you think you have a project that might qualify, just give me a call. We can discuss your project, see which program would be the most beneficial if it applies for more or is eligible for more, would apply to more than one. We'll talk about some of the things like the scope of the project, the budget, the timeline, and then if we deem that it's eligible, I'll walk you through the steps to apply. And as you know, Rich said with his programs, I'll shepherd you right through that process. Once you actually submit your application to determine the award letter, it's about a 4 to 6 week process. Next slide, please. Again, just give me a call. I am happy to help. Really excited to learn more about a variety of different projects happening in Niagara County. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dave Yeager, in energy efficiency. Dave?
Thank you, Jenna. I know everybody's had a lot of information so far, and I'm going to keep it fairly short with a focus of what some of the energy efficiency measures we do incentivize that typically, in my experience, when I go out and meet with clients, that they're not aware of. So really more of an intent for a broad overview, give you an idea of what can be incentivized. So if you're sitting on the fence about a project and you're not sure, how you're going to be able to do it, you can always contact me, and I can walk you through our programs and start the process with an application and go forward. But first of all, to participate in our programs, it's assuming you're, a customer and you do pay into what we call our systems benefit charge. You'll see that on the bill. It's called SBC. So assuming that our energy efficiency measures are not in total, but just to again jog your mind and thought process. Lighting and lighting controls, most people are very aware of that. That's the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. I will say this, if you haven't done a conversion to LED yet, I don't know for sure the extent of what we'll be incentivizing in the years down the road. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done that or looked at that, to get that on your radar for a potential project, you know, in the next year or so. Again, I don't know for sure, but just an encouragement to take a look at that. The next thing I have on there is air compressors. A lot of people aren't aware that we do studies where we'll look at the leaks, and if you're able to fix the leaks, you get incentivized for the kilowatt hours saved. Also, new air compressors as well, replacement air compressors. VFDs is next on the list. So the variable frequency drives, a lot of people aren't aware that those can be a big energy savers. You know, that whether there's go on a fan or a pump or a compressor, they can be a big energy saver. Chillers, process chillers, for items like that, you're really incented for putting in a premium chiller over a standard one. That's where that delta is where you're going to generate the savings and incentives. With that, you also have refrigeration systems, fans, and controls. I have RTEM and building controls. RTEM stands for real-time energy management. That's where we'll have a qualified system provider come out and install software to identify and implement low-cost energy saving measures. Building controls, we also have a program where we do retro commissioning, where we optimize your existing system, your building control system. Thermal blankets is something that isn't commonly thought of, but that can be something can be incentivized where you're saving kilowatt hours. Last but not least, we have process improvements on there. A lot of companies aren't aware that just say, for example, you're able to do as much work with a 50 horsepower pump that replaces a 100 horsepower pump, and you have the same production. That reduction in kilowatt hours would be a process improvement and could apply. So that's just again to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do other than lighting and have been done. Next slide, please. So some of the additional offerings we have in helping you is we do have people that can come out and create an energy plan for you, where we're looking at your bills, talking to staff, collecting operational data, and putting together a plan of potential measures that can be and probably should be done in your plant. So again, we're looking at equipment and process. It's essentially an ASHRAE level 1 study. The second thing I alluded to earlier on my last slide too is compressed air studies. We'll actually have somebody come out and tag the areas of where you have leaks and that can be fixed, and we'll do a write-up on how much energy you're losing, how much it would cost to fix the leaks, etc. So those two things are something we can do in conjunction with you. Last is with the push for electrification and clean heat, electric heat pumps. Those are a little more involved. I would say call me. But again, that's a big push moving forward. And with all these potential measures, as many of our previous guests have said, please reach out to me to get into the details. And I'd be happy to go through the nuances of all the programs. And, you might be surprised what you might be able to do if you really look. So next slide, please. So that's my contact information, Dave Jager. Got my phone number and email, either one. Just reach out to me. I'd be happy to walk you through all the programs and see if you qualify and see if we can help you get some projects done. Thanks again, and I'll turn it over to Whitney Skeens, and she's our EV expert.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Mike, for having us here today. See some familiar faces in the audience list there, Michael Hibbert and Paul. Thank you for joining. A lot of folks have heard about electric vehicle incentives through National Grid by way of a lot of the outreach that I've done and the doors that folks here have opened for me to share. So with that, Kathy, I'll just really fly through these slides very high level, and feel free to connect with me individually following today's presentation. So National Grid is providing incentives on infrastructure side components to installing EV charging at business customer locations. Any business customer account, no overall cap on the dollars that we can bring per customer or the number of plugs we can do per site. So sky's the limit, but we do look at the infrastructure only. We do not cover hardware. However, I will note here that hardware column at this point in time, there is a program through NYSERDA called Charge Ready that is funding a portion of the hardware costs for qualified applicants. So with National Grid's portion, every project will have customer side infrastructure connecting your meter to the station itself, building that interconnection. And then some projects will require utility side infrastructure where existing capacity is insufficient to support the new charging load. So we look at that total cost, and we cover up to 50, up to 90, or up to 100%. Next slide, please, Kathy. This next slide indicates kind of where we fall with those three tiers: 50% if it's private, 90% public access, and 100% for two very specific project types in disadvantaged communities. Most of our projects receive a 90% incentive. In order to qualify, you must put at least 2 plugs at the project site. Next slide. This is a very busy one, but all in, I'll summarize. You would be connecting first with an approved installer. We have over 50 companies that are actively engaged across upstate New York working with us. They will apply to the incentive on your behalf. They will obviously come out to your site, discuss different options for the interconnection, working with your budget, thinking about different hardware options. You may need something simple, or you may need something a little more complex if you want to manage different sort of bells and whistles that different equipment has. So they will be sort of the shepherd of the entire process, obviously work through construction. Once the stations are active in the ground and you are happy, we will pay out the incentive. Next slide, please. We're also, as I said, stackable with many other different funding streams. The Charge Ready program specifically, which is time limited. It's $12 million that they are spending down fairly quickly, priority being workplace and multi-unit dwelling and public destinations. So if you're interested, now is the time to really jump into this. Would love to help you. Also, both state and federal tax credits are available on charging projects in the year that they were accounted for. And then next slide, please, Kathy. We're also offering under this Make Ready program a fleet assessment, fleet services to support the conversion of any business fleets. Also working with the schools and transit authorities to convert those medium heavy duty vehicles to electric, supporting some infrastructure side costs as well as the sort of entry point to the journey, which is the assessment, taking a look at the site feasibility, the current usage, and then the projected usage once those chargers were installed. Next slide, please. I think this is just kind of showcasing some of the places where we've been and some of the partners, public entities as well as private that we are working with. And a slide next on the fleet journey, fleet electrification journey. The primary point of contact for our fleet programs is my colleague Leslie Vishwanath, and her information is also on the final slide. But essentially, we will provide those advisory services, and then we'll work with the customer from start to finish on installing the charging, bringing funding as we can. We do anticipate additional dollars from the state of New York that is supporting the medium heavy duty sector. The program that I just described earlier for all of you business customers is funded through ratepayer. So you are paying into this fund. In sum, it is a total of $700 million statewide for all 6 joint utilities that are regulated electric providers in the state of New York. So National Grid is just one of 6. Our program is $143 million with the goal of installing 16,000 plugs. But other utilities, if you're a customer of NYSEG, would have a very similar portfolio of programs under this quote unquote make ready umbrella. So if you are a NYSEG customer, don't worry, there's something for you as well. Next slide, please. I think we're just finishing up here with, some additional resources, lots of links here for you to dig into. And the final slide is contact information for me, my colleague Leslie, and then some of the others on our team statewide, and look forward to hearing from many of you. And thanks as well to those of you on this call that have already connected with me and have expressed interest, and we'll look forward to getting projects going in 2024. And I'll turn it back to Kathy. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you very much, Whitney. We appreciate that. And I'll tell you what, there was an awful lot of information there. And again, I just want to remind everybody that you're going to be getting the slide deck shortly if you're on the call today. And all those links are hot links for you. So you'll be able to get more information through that. And as Jenna mentioned, you can see all of our workshops if you missed the previous 4 on our website. Just go to NiagaraCountyBusiness.com, go to the featured events page, and you'll see all of our workshops that are there for you to go through and to get some great information from. Again, thanks to our presenters today. When you leave this session, you're going to receive a survey that'll appear in a new window of your internet browser. We would really appreciate your comments and feedback, and we hope to see you again at a future event. We'll be doing a few more of these, and maybe even some in-person events in 2024. So everyone take care, and we'll talk to you somewhere down the line.